I'm very happy to be here. And I want to thank Shelley and I want to thank the board for this invitation. I was born in Jerusalem and grew up in Tel Aviv. I went to agriculture school, was a founding member of a kibbutz, your own, in the Galilee, graduated seminar kibbutzim, all in Israel. I came to study ceramics in New York City at Greenwich House Pottery and Alfred University. I had my own studio wherever I lived. I came to California in 1959. I always liked the craft aspect of the arts, and I always used the materials and media that would express my idea in the arts the best. So I call myself a multimedia artist, and I work in series and use my intuition to direct me. I would like to show you some of the work and describe the best I can in the 15 minutes that you allotted me, and to cover as much of the scope as possible, because I'm talking about 50 years of artwork, and that's very complicated. So, what we see here now is the very first show that I did at the Roberts Gallery in 1968. And here are three works from the exhibition. The photo on the left shows Santa Barbara docks, if anybody in the audience remembers Santa Barbara docks. Oh, I just lost that. Um, we're still there. There was a big slip of oil coming in just a week and a half ago. The image on the top is called Vietnam Mother. And this is inspired by the poem of Daniel Berrigan, who was a Jesuit priest who objected to the war in Vietnam. The third piece, the bottom, it's called charcoal briquettes and addresses the scraping of the coal from the surface of the hill rather than going under it. And that would take the mountain at least 100 years to recover, no matter what kind of plans they have in tree replanting. And they do have tree replanting programs, but they're not doing the job. So now move to the next one. And this is the work that I did mostly in the 70s. That's the time when there was a little enormous amount of fervor in Los Angeles, particularly among the women. We sort of woke up, all of us, one way or the other. And this particular image is from Jacqueline Anhold Gallery in 1974, where you see a lot of porcelain heads and some of the paper pieces on the walls. My idea of connecting with the family was a very strong part of my work. And my mother died in 1974. And I visited Israel and the family, and her drawers were filled with kerchiefs. And it occurred to me, dawned on me, that a kerchief for a woman is actually an interesting symbol to deal with. And I saw it as a feminine symbol. There is a dream sequence piece that is on permanent view at the Smithsonian, and you could see it on my website. I also suggest you go to my website because I can't in 15 minutes show you everything. And also there's a lot of materials. And the exhibition traveled in different parts of the world with the Smithsonian. Um, and from 1980 and 1983. And so that piece that was traveled around was requested by the Smithsonian, and they have it still today. So we're going to move to the next one. And some of you probably remember the place. This is the building, the Women's Building in Los Angeles in 1979. This was an exhibition that I curated, and I must say it was the first exhibition I curated. And getting involved with conscious grazing groups was a very important part of our struggle and our commitment. And in this picture, you see a lot of crochet that is actually embedded in called cast bronze, which is a material that you create with acrylic, strong acrylics and bronze powders. And I also had included in this exhibition Nancy Spiro, Hella Hamid, and Gila Hirsch. In the 70s, Joyce Kozlov and Judy Chicago had been encouraging women artists in Los Angeles to organize. I was a member of the Los Angeles Council of Women in the Arts, which pressured the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, LACMA, to present women's work. And it took them about 5 years to actually create that show. And the show was magnificent. It was 400 years of women's work. And anyone who came into the room was stunned, both by the amazing power and the beauty of the work. And I think Gentilesca was the one who really, her spirit really worked for us. So they called the show Women Artists 1550 to 1950. And there is a catalog that you might find on the internet. It's worth looking for it. It traveled to Brooklyn and it traveled to Texas. So now I'm going to go to the next one. From the porcelain heads, I created handmade paper. And I called it the Wing series. I used some of the molds from my porcelain heads and created handmade paper sculptures. I also invited I was invited. The curiosity here is really these wings that you see here, that they are eagle wings that were defrosted, especially for my making a copy of them at the San Bernardino Museum, the Ornithology Museum. And I used that for handmade paper. And when I did the handmade paper exhibition, I used every big fibrous plant that lived around my house. And so, and even artichokes that the kids had for dinner. And it was a kind of a hard time for me personally, emotionally and physically. That the time dealing with family issues, the kids were very young, and it was complicated to be very active as a feminist that demanded a lot at the time. I also at the same time, Biden says he can walk and chew gum, and I know that every woman knows the story of how to do it. And I also was kind of lucky with that because in 1976 and 78, I was one of 24 artists selected to teach in the first Artist in the School program in California. And some of you probably had done that already. So I was selected to go to TB Elementary School in Compton. This slide shows the mural project the kids created, which included a total of 8 murals in the school, and really changed the school environment. So my procedure of how I went about to engage them was that the first I looked at the curriculum that they received in the room where they studied, and a lot of it had to do with California, and a lot of had to do with the country, with US. And so here is a circular, wonderful cement mural that the kids created. They had to go into the library, find the flower of the country, of the state, excuse me, and they then had to present the place that the estate is at and their economy and any other interesting thing that had to do um, with the state. And then they were able to paint on the mural itself. This particular mural is kind of inspired by African designs, the black and white lines and the kind of funny imagery that the kids related to it. And that was very long. These are big, big murals. There's 37 feet in the circular one. And this pride mural really got the whole community very excited. And it was a pride for everyone. And of course, there are many other stories about that, how the principal was kind of shy to ask for answers for the murals and changing the floors, and because they were sued consistently that the children fell and all the tarmac was packed with holes. And it took a year and a half to get it. I decided I will go to the maintenance man and talk to him. And well, we had the opportunity to give them a gift with the Cement Workers Union. And I got the permission to go ahead and do it in a day and a half. So, you know, you have to flex your muscles when you're in the places where people are a little shy to go ahead and do things. So I'm going to show you a few works that deal with public art. And this is a public art at Step Up on Second in Santa Monica, an organization that provides services and has 26 housing units for mentally ill adults in Santa Monica. I think they have a few more units now built in Santa Monica. So I titled the work, A Wall of Water, A Curtain of Light. And here you can see through this, what do you call them? The windows in the roof, the water starts rolling here in the channel, and then moves all across the 28 feet of terrazzo and ends up being in the, ends up getting into the channel here, and moves up and returns, and the process goes on and on. And the most important part of that is that water creates a very healing environment and a very healing space. And this particular room was used for many, many uh, events and dinners and all kinds of opportunity for the people to get together. Now, Earth rotation. Earth rotation, this piece is 10 feet by 20 feet, acrylic on canvas. And this is part of my Olive series. The Olive series has been a very interesting series. It took a long time to do, and it was inspired by my translation of Avraham Gulaffia's book, Sefer Ha'ot, which is in Hebrew, and I translated it to English. The book was given to me by my friend, the late Jack Hirschman, a poet laureate of San Francisco. And this was an interesting process with dealing with the translation, which was really kind of directed by, I don't know what. I only translated one page a day, and it took almost 3 years, or no, actually 2 years to translate it completely. The language is, Abraham Gulaffia lived in the 13th century in Spain. And he was kind of a very interesting visionary and an egalitarian person. He was allowing people to work with him, Islam, Jewish, Christian, and women. And so he was a very, very interesting personality. There are many, many funny stories about him that if I have a chance, I would tell you more. And this is, the piece was designed, actually, these big pieces were designed to go to Germany, where I had a show at the Stadtmuseum, and it was there in from 91 to 92, and it was there for 3 months. This is an exhibition at Track 16 in Santa Monica in 2009. The interesting thing is that when I was doing the bronzes, when I didn't have the money to put into the bronze, I worked on canvas. So now I'll show you the Divine Chariot. The Divine Chariot is a went too fast. The Divine Chariot is 4 standing posts, and they had wheels at the top. Everything in the piece is symbolic, and everything in the piece is related to either a myth or an idea in the Jewish tradition. And when I actually, this was going to go to the Skirball, but ended up not going there. It was going go to the Jerusalem, and this we designed for them before it was going to go, and that didn't happen. So the symbolism there has to do with the earth, strong animals, the eagle, the lion, and the ram, and the angels that guide us. And if you can see well enough, you would see that these are the upper spheres and these are the lower spheres. And this particular wheel holds the story of the community, because there is a thought in Jewish tradition that an idea is an idea, but it doesn't come to be or become until it goes into the community. And so that was a very um, interesting, important kind of work. Now, this is a proposal, and I hope it will finally rest somewhere, and there will be opportunities to discuss that. So since we are in that vein of thinking, I also did a show in 2014 and created this particular room. The show was at the Santa Monica Airport at Arena One, and it really covered, it started off by covering uh, an accident, a car accident that I had. But I always, from a certain point on, I was always involving meditation into my work, intuition into my work. And every time I decided to do something, I would become sort of a witness to what was going on. Um, so it was, this particular room was created to create a quiet and personal space. And what you see here is that every time I install a work, I usually set the north on the actual north of the place that it is facing. And north in right here in this space is 14 degrees away from center. And in this wheel, the circle is represents an image of the early Kabbalistic tree of life. I don't know how many know about the tree of life, the Jewish tree of life, that allows you to understand process and procedures of how. So the center of the circle represents the pathway to wisdom, which starts with the foundation. And the foundation is right here, and it keeps on going. And on the way, it's on the way to wisdom. And wisdom is really the very last stop at the top, which is interesting, and compassion and knowledge and the relationship between humans and their gods. Almost done, almost. These are part of works that I'm doing now. And it's both meditation and photography. And I work quite a bit with photography because at this moment, the sky is really available to me where I live. And I photograph it day and night. And I continuously work now with the veneer on wood veneer. And the opportunity to work on wood veneer, I have a certain kind of joy in doing it. It's very different than working on paper or working on canvas. And this particular series is a very meditative series, and I'll talk a little bit more about it as we go on. I wanted to share this Salt Mound with you. This was in 2017. I was invited to go to Jerusalem and to create a work or an installation, which I chose to do, um, that will address the watershed of the Jordan River to to Jericho, to the Dead Sea. And so I was lucky enough, the elite salt company actually gave me 2 tons of salt. And what you see here is about a ton and a half, oh, sorry, a ton and a half of salt. And I could, not yet, not yet, I go back. Just a few more minutes. And the fusion, there are infusion sacks, as you see, to create the urgency of what's happening with the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is dying, literally dying. It's been raped of its all the salts and materials and created really chaotic situation in the Dead Sea. And when clean water starts running into the areas of the dry area of the salt of the earth, the salt melts and creates pretty bad holes in the ground, and all their businesses have gone to pot. It's very sad. So I had these posters. I created those posters in Hebrew, English, and Arabic. And here is a video that addresses the actual watershed situation. So the Dead Sea, I need an hour to tell you more stories about that. But it was a very important situation to do this installation in Jerusalem. So I will I'll run a little quicker. These are also works that are done on veneer and with oil pastel. And most of the works are, oh, sorry. Most of the works are arid. The land is arid. There's nothing growing, there's no tree, there's no shrubs, there's nothing but the land itself in its own beauty. And here, all of a sudden, the eagle arrived. So I'm conflicted. Is it the last eagle or the first eagle? Is it a sun that is just going down, or a sun that just arrives? So this has become a very interesting series for me to kind of both being able to contemplate the emptiness. And so the most important part of the series is that water is available, that water is there, and that water actually brings hope. And this will be my very last, next is going to be my very last piece. And I call it Caskets on Common Grounds. I did that during the pandemic, and it's the piece is also done on aspen veneer, But here I used a mixed media, really a lot of different material. And so when I started it, I had counted 10 boxes with 10,000 people dead in each one. But when I finished the piece, the number has risen to 57,000 people for each box, and it's still rising. So the gold paint emphasizes the preciousness of the human life. And the circle of the night in motion depicts the souls living the earth. Thank you. I do have a video that I wanted to share with you also, and that's a very short video also.
Never mind. I was gonna say.
The designer wants to create a real amulet, a sacred comet, and a blessing for the space. And I never thought it would be open. I never thought that anything like this would happen.
So about 20 years ago, I met my husband, and he moved to Los Angeles and was looking for an art space, found a space that was available that was being rented by a woman named Linda Levy, and for 20 years, he's been in this space as a renter. About 2 years ago, we bought the space. Last week, we opened up the walls to do a renovation. And John called me yesterday and said, you have to come down. We have to see this. And there underneath all of the plaster was Bruria's name. And he was like, could it be a coincidence? Could that actually be the Bruria that we know? And then I looked over here and I saw Dale and Amy, and I couldn't believe it, that all these years we've been in your space. It really is your space, so it's quite magical.
This was an alternative space, you see. You have to remember that the LACWA group, Los Angeles Council for Women in the Arts, started in 1968. And that came out of a whole process of conscious raising groups, which began to really be very active. There was a moment where the women got together, sometimes 8 or 10 women, and they would meet once a month and discuss either their art, their needs, or the issues of the day. Among those artists, there were lots of very important artists that are notable today. Chita, Thea Selmans, and McCoy. It was an exciting moment for us because when we opened the place, we had 1,200 women who joined Women's Space. And we started with 5 and had a meeting with 72. And then when we opened it, it was like amazing. So word of mouth really was the one that really brought about a lot of interest. Here was really kind of cutting our teeth and something very new. Fran Rayboff and her husband owned this space, and it was a laundromat. And they gave it to us. They said, you can have it. And so that's what it was so fantastic, because we didn't pay anything. There was no monthly rent, but it was really a gift that was amazing at that moment.
What was it like to set up the space? Because I remember the scaffolding and laying the drywall. What was that like, and why did you do it yourselves?
Why did we do it ourselves? Because we had no money. And I mean, the gift of the space was really quite amazing, but there was no real money that supported us in doing this. The first exhibition here in this room was a very important one. It was the Inaugural Exhibition. And 3,000 people were standing outside this door. And they were all waiting to come in and see what's going on here. I think that in some way we really began to change the language of the arts at the time, where the personal became a political comment. And this is really was the contribution, as far as I'm concerned, of women artists to the art language. Even though the art world did not really run to accept it, this was our intent. Well, we had a group which you could call a board. This board met more often, maybe once in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because this was really a hotbed of activity here. And we created a program. Among the programs that we created was the Pioneer Women. And the Pioneer Women were people like Anais Nin, Bella Lewitsky, and June Wayne. And there were hundreds of people, hundreds of women and men who came to listen to them because there was no other platform that did that. We created an opportunity for artists who just to come and put their name on a board and create an exhibition for themselves. It was an open call or open wall. And that was a very exciting thing too. There were no critics. There were nobody saying what you should put there. And they would just have to wait for their name to come up. And that's it.
How often was the programming? About a different show every month, so?
I think we did, we tried, because what we did is really address the issue of the need. Gay women, for example, were not shown at all. And it was something that we wanted to have immediately. And I think they had a show here, the first show, after the first exhibition here. Then we had the Black women involved. And the thing I remember the most about that they would do certain things like create a party or invite other speakers or create an opportunity for more interaction.
We feel really privileged to have this space, and we're trying to figure out right now what we might do to honor this as, you know, maybe, I guess, could you call this the beginning of the women's art movement in Los Angeles? Is this like the—
in terms of claiming space.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bruria. That we have oh my God.
Yeah, thank you.
So amazing. I mean, thank you so much for sharing your work and your curation. And you have been around for a very long time, and so glad to get to know you.
The women artists, that was at LACMA in 1976. And it is, I mean, Karen can speak to it. It is the show that put the idea of women in art history on the map. In art historical circles, it's more often referred to, I've heard it a lot of times, that different conferences, they'll reference it went from here to the Brooklyn Museum. And the fact that it started here in LA at LACMA is very sweet. And that actually it was provoked by the council is great. And if you guys started in 1968, LACMA didn't open till 1966 in its current location. It used to be the LA County Museum of Art, Science, and History down at Exposition Park. So this is, LA coming of age as the capital, as in its art days, and it's very exciting.
Very exciting. Oh my God, you're here right at the beginning, Bruria. So I had a question about your outdoor sculptures, and as a sculptor myself, did you create the pieces for a specific place, or did you just create it and then try to find a place for them?
I think that the LACMA was around a little bit earlier than that. I think that the LACMA has been there for more years than 2, that you say, because there were continuous shows that were very, very important happening, different artists, and most of them were men, no, not one woman. When we did our research, there was one woman, and those hanging on the walls of LACMA, and that was Dorothea Lane, and absolutely no other woman involved. And so when we went to talk to the board of directors of LACMA, the question was asked of us if it was time for women to actually spread their wings. And so my answer was, or my question was, do you think that the Black people in the South, is it their time to address it? And that was in 1960, early in 1960. The issues that were coming up with the community at large. So what's, I think the one that came in, the big show that came in was Art and Technology. And that was a show that really upset a lot of women. And Chana Horowitz, for example, was a very, I don't know if you're familiar with her work, but it's a really good idea to get familiar with her work. She is dead now for almost 10 years, but her work is at the Leeson Gallery, and they are pushing her work very big. And Chana was a feminist who did these very abstract kind of ideas. She worked with numbers, she worked in grids, she worked in things that had a lot to do with philosophical connections. And she was the only one who made a proposal for the show, which Maurice Stockman at the time said, women don't do that. And so, there was a lot to struggle with. People are saying that at this moment, it's really the soulful art and the women's art that is making the roads in the art.
Really meaningful artwork that you have been doing, and you've been pioneering a lot of your work and for women. And Pamela wanted to know what size the caskets were on the ground. And then, does anyone know where the women's space was in Venice?
In what is now the Culver City area.
Culver City, somewhere.
That's still
It's not far from Versailles Cuban restaurant.
Okay. On the same side?
Amy, you know the address, Amy?
No, but it's within a few blocks. I mean, it's a personal studio, so that was one of the issues: is did they want to honor it publicly somehow, or did they want to keep their privacy? And I think open to marking it, but it's definitely in that general area near kind of
so between Overland and Motors, that kind of thing.
That is a corner of Sepulveda. It's about 2-3 houses away from Sepulveda.
Does anyone have any specific questions you want to verbally ask right now rather than write it in the chat?
I just wanted to add that the Women's Building originally was at Chouinard Art Institute, and then it moved to downtown to the Chinatown area. Now, right now, Sherry Galke is creating a film about the Women's Building and all that happened there. And so you guys will see a lot of information about that on Facebook.
Right.
Because it's time for us to really look at it and appreciate it. And I was pleased to hear all the, how Bruria was involved in it and how it created a space for so many women to, to branch out, to express themselves, to have a place to be creative. And I wanted to also say, after looking at Bruria's website and her CV, I was just sort of like, wow, I was just overwhelmed. And I just wanted to say, I thought, the work is personal and it's political and it's important. And so she's able to, touch on all those things with the work that she created. But isn't it amazing how many different media she dabbles in? I mean, that is really astounding. So, wow, that's it. Anyway.
Yeah, so impressive, Brie. You have such an impressive career, just something that all of us can aspire to. And I think, you've certainly contributed a lot to the feminist movement, to creating a space for women. And again, for all of us to be supportive of each other. And I just continue to, be amazed by women in our organization that are very powerful and talented, and that we all are just so wonderful contributors to our society and to the art making.
Bruria and Ruth Weisberg, they're substantial artists. They've always been collaborative. They bring others with them. And I don't think any of us now can appreciate what it meant to be an artist and a mother, the choices they made at that time and how much they integrated. And it was no accident when the film that was the Breaking in Two film was trying to, which is still not come out, but Bruria, someone had an idea, seeing this room brainstorming about like an exhibition would be great. And the next thing we knew, there was an astounding exhibition at the at Santa Monica Art Studios. So she really, the depth, and I'm just, we've spent time together over the years, but I feel like I'm meeting you anew. So this has been terrific. Thank you.
I want to just tell you little bits of ideas some that I jumped over. I met Judy in 1967. Judy Chicago, she was called Garowitz at the time. And we were very close friends. We did a lot of things together. We planned the women's space together. We did a lot of things together. And the transitions of, I was the chair of the development group, that was a big thing, the development. And moving to Chouinard was helped by Elise Greenstein, and moving on to the China, the Barrio, and the Women's Building was an enormous success and an enormous opportunity. But what it did do, which is for us to really see, was that unfortunately the number of women who were coming continuously to the women's space and really dependent on it, like all of us, did not go as far as the women's building. And the good thing is that Judy, Sheila, and Arlene had created the school. And I know that Anne is here, if she is. She participated in the school. And I think that the whole spirit of activity and the whole spirit of camaraderie was extremely important to maintain and to be part of. And I see that in your group. I think Elise and Shelley and Karen and all of you and Sandra are very active, and Kathy also, right? Am I right, Kathy? Yes. And I think this is really the essence of the activities that you're doing. At the time, there was more politics that was involved, you know, and it was complex. It was going on. Some of it is still going on. It's very exciting to see women who started along with us. What we did, we exchanged work to support each other. You know, the idea was if you bloom, we bloom, you know. And that was another thought that was part of our activity, which when you became close enough and interested enough, you shared your work, you exchanged your work. And I think things happened to the women who kind of flew and came up above the others. I know Lucita, for example, is a very close friend of mine, or was a close friend of mine. It's a very hard place to be. It is not a pleasant place to be unless you're treated with very kind people. And I know Judy was scraping the walls many, many times, and it wasn't an easy journey for her. It isn't an easy journey for any of us, because we don't have the support that other countries provide to their artists. We don't have the support between, you know, groups that should support us. We don't, the Women's Museum in DC is a fancy of a very rich lady. And it took years to bring that to a place where women can have a very important show. So the struggle continues. I think that the young generation has an opportunity to do something more than we did. And in that sense, you know, we have to help them, and we have to support them, and we have to encourage them. And we all struggle with the notion of how do we carry on with as being a mother, you know, as you said, Sandra. There's a few exhibitions that I curated, and one of them was the Breaking in Two. The other one was in 2007.
Then and now.
Women artists then and now. And the catalogs are available, by the way. If you're interested, just write to me. And all that is part of the history. And so the historian among us really have to kind of put themselves together and address it in a different way, you know, with the understanding the time that this happened, understanding the struggles of the time that happened. And, you know, I don't think it's being articulated enough.
What you started with the Women's Building and with, you know, in the beginning really was groundbreaking, and we're still building on that. And as women, we are supporting each other and holding hands and building each other up. And hopefully with the Southern California Women's Caucus, our group, and being part of the Women's WCA for the national, we're all here to support each other and remind each other that we are here for each other. And every month, and unfortunately we're not going to have it in December, but I hope we do continue to have each of you speak about your work and definitely your struggles and what you've gone through, because this is a great meeting ground to learn about each other. And Bruria, you're such an inspiration, and I thank you so much to you for your presentation. I'm so proud to be part of this organization and have all of you contribute. So thank you. Yes, all the clapping. Yes.